Hey guys, Steve here with the stock market outlook for August 25th, 2014. Just wanted to go through what we had happen in the market last week. Basically not anything what I had predicted or thought it was going to happen from last week's video. We basically came back in and rallied straight through these resistance points that we had identified, and also right through the consolidation from, I guess last month. So, right now we're sitting at new highs on the S&P 500 futures. I think as far as Friday goes, we kind of had a little bit of a pullback and, closed back towards the top of the range. We had talked about last week, this being an indicator as to where we were. We had the market down at one point. I think it was like 15 or 16 points. And we closed basically unchanged for the day. Maybe down to 2 points or so at that point I thought if we were going to roll over, that would be the point that it would happen, and we would close near the lows and then continue lower the rest of the week. That didn't happen. I also thought that we would consolidate in here before moving straight through this 1980 level, and of course that didn't happen either. So at this point with the market, I'll say it again. I just don't see us continuing straight up. That's my opinion. I think at some point in here we have to consolidate for a week or two. Pull off something like this where we kind of just move sideways, let this 50-day moving average come up and support. And if we came down and maybe we're in this range still, that would be good as far as I'm concerned. Just to to work off some of these overbought conditions, because for right now we're basically rallied from the low of 1889 to 1990, so almost 100 points in the S&P futures in what is this, 1 2 3 4 5 in 10 days, 10 trading days, so 2 weeks. In my opinion, that's too much too quick. I think we need a rest. The NQs, the Nasdaq futures. We talked about this, I think, back on the 15th, about this being, so I guess that was last week's video, about this being a great entry point if you wanted to get long the Nasdaq. Right? It was breaking out above this consolidation. You could have set your stop here at 38.55, and you continued higher. For right now, we're basically about 100 points higher than where we had identified this entry, 75 points. So that's a good trade. For right now, stop would still be 38.55 if you were trading it. For us, looking at it as just a market indicator, I think this is performing very well. If you look at the weekly chart, we came in, we touched trend line support way back here in March or May. And now, we pulled back, and we're, we haven't even come close to that trend line again. If we redraw this as a channel, you can see that we are coming close to the top of the channel. So maybe, I think, again, similar to the S&P, that we, maybe have another week or so of upside, and then we need to put in some sideways action just to allow, again, this 50-day moving average to catch up. But look at those last 10 trading days. I mean, you've had one negative day in the Nasdaq in the last 10 trading days. That's a good run. And we've had runs like that before. And this is kind of where we're looking for, just something like this little consolidation that allows this 50-day moving average to to catch up. Maybe it moves sideways a little bit longer and then bounces higher. But for right now, the Nasdaq looks like it definitely wants a little bit higher prices, but I'm just not. I'm a little concerned. I guess the gist of this whole thing is I'm a little concerned how quick and how far we've come since that bottom. On one hand, it is very bullish that we rebounded as strongly as we did. On the other hand, I'm just concerned that there's not a lot of price support, really holding this up. So I'm afraid if we did get some selling pressure, there's really no places that we would be able to set any type of stops or measure against because of how quickly we've moved up. The Dow futures, /YM on Thinkorswim. They're basically at resistance. Okay, again, this was not something I thought. I thought we were going to maybe consolidate below this 50-day moving average, but we've basically taken the 50-day moving average back. And now if you look at the weekly chart, this looks like a great setup. Again, forget the ticker, if you're not trading the YM, but as far as setup wise goes, you could see here we had the nice trend line. Okay, it broke the trend line, but now it's consolidating in this box. It bounced off of these previous highs back, through this dashed red line. All right, that previous highs, that's where it bounced. And now we're looking at potentially making new highs. Again, I would like to see some consolidation in this, 1700 to say 16,850 level, above this 50-day moving average. I would love to see some sideways movement for another week or so, and then eventually a breakout over 17,000. For right now, again, I just don't see. I don't see how we could continue this breakout without looking for people that were trapped, in some bad positions to start liquidating. And the last one, which we started looking at last week, was the Russell Futures /TF. And we had talked about this last week. There we go. We talked about this last week, how they were really in this range between 1200 and 1100. All right, and see on the weekly chart we identified that range, and we're basically moving back towards the top of that range. I don't see why the Russell Futures would not want to test this 1200 level. It has every time it's hit the 1100, it's gone up and tested 1200. Came back down, tested the 1100. Now we're going to test 1200. So, I don't think that's out of the question with the Russell Futures. And as far as the daily chart is concerned, it's just, it's a lot of chop. So we've obviously broken this downtrend line. And now to me it looks like we're starting this uptrend. So again, we're at the 50-day moving average. We're seeing some resistance in there. That also corresponds to this low back in here from the middle of June, and this low here from the end of June. So again, it looks like this moves up and down fairly intact with the trend lines. So now we're above this trend line. We've broken this downtrend line, and I think again, 1200. I don't see why we don't test 1200. But as far as overall, I think the markets are set up great. I think the issue is we just need some consolidation at this point to digest those gains before we move forward, to really make sure that the next move is sustainable. And there's going to be buying pressure coming in, and not somebody that's going to buy something and have a false breakout or anything like that. So again, we use the indices more as a gauge to where we feel the market psychology is, and the breadth and everything like that. Again, we don't use the market to determine if we enter or exit positions. We continue to take those on their own merit. But it's just nice to see where we think the market is, if we think there's more upside, if we're pushing against resistance, just to be able to gauge our expectations on our positions. But like I said, the last week in the mono portfolio, if you haven't watched the weekend update, was an excellent week for us. We're basically at our highs for the portfolio since I started it in the beginning of July. We've exceeded the S&P 500 every week that we've been in it. And for right now, we're trading well. We're getting some good positions involved, and I think for right now, like I said, I think I'd like to see some sideways action. But again, we trade on price action, not predictions. So let's see what happens this week. All right. So if you haven't already, please make sure to follow me on Twitter, StockTwits, and Google+, and subscribe to the YouTube channel and the nightly recap to get all your future updates. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you tonight for the strategy session.